Brother lives in California and your parents are in Texas and you have no relation, you call each other once a month. What relationship is that? Or the 1940s, people thought of religion in the United States as a force that brought people together.
So-called Israel violated the international law because it is backed by the US. We should be clever enough not to be divided. The basis for unity is akhlaq, not ideology. If there is an enmity, idfa billati hiya ahsan. Respond to any negative thing by positive thing.
What are some things that, Imam Tom, you think Shaykh Tulab Ilm, students of knowledge, should know about secularism? Because it's often presented and we often absorb some presumptions that it's neutral and certain things about secularism. What would you say from your perspective and your reading? Some of the things we need to know about.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu. I think the most basic thing to understand is that there is no such thing as neutrality. Secularism presents itself as something that's very neutral. The absence of an ideology, the absence of values, an empty space where everybody can come and exchange ideas. And that's not true. Secularism is a subtle and persistent force to try to change values in a certain direction. And once you realize that, you can start to pay attention to, okay, well then what's the force that secularism is exerting upon religions, upon people, upon families, upon institutions? What are the things that it's trying to create? What are the things that it's trying to stop? And then once you observe these sort of pervasive forces, you see that really it's about creating a new type of religion, okay? So whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, if we imagine that if the deen were a cloth, then secularism would be trying to cut the cloth to fit into a certain box or to fit into a certain mold. So it will be trying to create, as far as people understand it, they think it's Islam, but it's really just a selectivity of some parts of Islam, the emphasis being changed, some parts being emphasized, some parts being ignored, some parts being considered taboo or things like that. So these forces are constantly working on us, and they're working on us through media, through books, through movies, through commercials, through YouTube. We don't even necessarily realize it. Even it shapes our emotional reactions to things, right? So for example, we're seeing the butchery happening in Gaza and Palestine, and we see how much violence can be done to the people of Palestine, and how little is the pushback, and restrained, to be honest, is the pushback from, like, let's say Palestinians or other people. Yet, in the experience of people in the UK or the US, some violence is felt as much more significant than others. A Palestinian child picks up a rock and throws it at an IDF soldier, and this is a potential terrorist in the making. Whereas the IDF can press buttons and bomb and assassinate people all day long, and it's justified. Now, there's many reasons for this, but one of the reasons is how secularism shapes people's emotions, because religious violence, if somebody says Allahu Akbar when they pick up that rock, now all of a sudden everyone's afraid, right? But if someone says national defense, now we're, oh, okay, this is understandable. It also touches our idea about gender roles and our idea about family life, right? You have a lot of people, a hot topic, should women stay home and tend the kids, or should they, have careers or get jobs? And, we're not trying to get into this particular, issue from a fiqhi perspective, but just know that secularism is not neutral. It's not a neutral force in this equation. If you've been raised in a secular space, the sort of society around you cares one way or another which one you choose, and it will actually try to push you to make one choice rather than the other. And that can be, again, through media. If you've seen everybody in commercials and stuff, and they have high-powered jobs and careers, and they're smiling, and they seem very fulfilled, versus somebody who is, the sort of backwards mom staying at home, who's ignorant, who kind of hits the kids with the sandals and things like this. These are sort of emotional connections that are being made through representation that actually create desires inside of human beings, right? So someone gets to be 18 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old, and they say, oh, I don't know, I just feel like I want to do this. Okay, where do those feelings come from? Now, I'm not saying that all feelings can be ascribed. It doesn't have that type of power, but it's an interesting mixture that your feelings even about these things, if you have a visceral reaction in support of this or against this, secularism is one of the many forces that is shaping those feelings that happen inside you. So
it's like by osmosis, we just kind of grow up absorbing these unspoken kind of premises and stuff.
May I interfere? Yeah.
Yeah, you were nodding when he was talking about that. You had got some experience.
See, yeah. To be honest with you, I started to look at things differently. Okay, and there are two ways of looking at things, at concepts. There is the theoretical, abstract way, and there is the contextualized way. You don't find values, principles that do exist in a vacuum. Normally, ideas, including values, including concepts, they exist in a context. So I find that whenever we want to evaluate a value, a concept, an idea, we need to contextualize it. And that helps us to be more practical, and let alone to be more intellectual, but to be more practical when we speak to people. They don't perceive us as, Muslims who are speaking in a vacuum, and they are just those angry, emotional Muslims that they just criticize everything that is not Islamic. Why do I say this? I believe now that, after this aggression and invasion of Gaza, and you came from America, and we have seen the Z generation, Z Americans, in America and in Britain, in the West in particular, but in specifically in America and in the UK, that more young people now are coming to Islam. And it is true that they are coming to Islam as a spiritual alternative for the lack of spirituality that they have, and also as a spiritual booster when they see that the people of Gaza, despite what they are going through, they are still saying Alhamdulillah, and they are able to to be positive. So they are wondering what is the reason behind that, as we all know. But now we need to realize something so significant, that we need to seize the opportunity to present Islam as a civilizational alternative, because globally the UN, most of the UN international laws are failing to meet people's expectations to provide an acceptable level of justice, which is a basic human right. And that's why, these young people are starting to question their countries, their systems, the UN, etc., because just simply how on earth this genocide can take place and no one is able to stop it. How, not just to stop it, how on earth that those people are starving to death and no one is able to, deliver to them just clean water to drink. What is this kind of world? And the destruction in Gaza goes beyond imagination, and no one is, still the leaders of most of the Western countries are supportive of this genocide. Now, this vacuum, which is presenting Islam as a civilizational alternative, this needs from us a different way of addressing this generation, addressing, in fact, the whole world. yeah, and addressing young people and tackling these, these values, these concepts, these ideas. Even secularism, yes, from maybe an abstract point of view, is what you have mentioned. Okay, we may agree, disagree, but generally speaking, this is how it can be described from a theoretical perspective. But if someone were to say, what is the alternative? Yeah, what is the alternative? So you are criticizing secularism. Yeah, what is the alternative? And now this compels us to contextualize the discussion. Okay, just a minute. Alternative for who? Is it for a country like Saudi Arabia? Yeah, Egypt, Yemen, Pakistan, yeah, okay, Muslim countries. Not just Muslim by majority, but they have Islamic laws, or they are claiming that they are, implementing Islamic laws. Or are you talking about a country like the US? Okay, so what is the alternative? And that, what I said, this is what I'm talking about, contextualization.
But what does that mean in practice, Sheikh?
Yeah, so for example,
to say Islam, present Islam as a civilization alternative, what does that mean?
Yeah, so for example, when you say secularism versus Islam, then what you mentioned is true. Absolutely true. But secularization, maybe in the absence of Islam, maybe is one of the best forms. So for example, America is not going to implement Islam, is not going to, yeah? So what is the system America should follow?
What is the system America should follow?
Okay, so maybe we can say, well, yeah, secular system is the best for America because they are not going to implement Islam, apart from Islam.
Some distinguish between the secular and secularism, right? As complete ideology, complete package that has those underlying forces. But secular can mean something which isn't overtly to do with favoring one or your like we might say secular science.
Yeah.
So things that aren't necessarily directly attributed to.
I agree, but let us talk practically and put everything into perspective in a contextualized way. America, okay, if we don't want them to implement secularism, so what do we want them to implement? Don't tell me Islam. Okay, we know that Islam is the, okay, but let us not just be utopian or just dreaming.
Well,
okay.
I don't want to put words.
Now, currently, what it will be.
What's important is to recognize that secularism is not neutral, and if you recognize a lot of the theoretical baggage within it, it helps you to prepare how to address it. It doesn't mean you have to overthrow it and replace it with
so that is,
you recognize where are your assumptions coming from.
Okay.
When you're speaking about something, because unfortunately we do this a lot when we talk about our rights, for example, as Muslim citizens. You see this school in Wembley.
Yeah.
Recently,
Yeah.
Or
Michael
in hijab in France or something. The way we argue about our rights, it's unfortunately sometimes in a very secularist lens as well. We end up missing an opportunity. For example, we'll say this is our right under, as a religious minority to practice our religion, whereas this is something that secularism produces for you to say, to make you some kind of oddity, that you are against the norm. The norm is this. You are against the norm, and we'll give you a few.
Okay.
Rather than saying, for example, arguing it from a perspective of, it doesn't. I don't have to. I shouldn't have to argue why I want to. The sister wants to wear hijab. This is the norm for me. Do you get what I mean? Likewise, praying in school on lunch break. Why it shouldn't be about prayer? Some could argue. It should be about why you encourage
Dr. Salman. If we want to summarize it, okay, so They say that America now, okay, there is not enough Muslims for them and to implement Islam, and they don't want to implement Islam, etc. America or England or most of the European countries. So what is the system that you propose?
I think we should get Tom to...
Yeah.
I want to approach it from a slightly different angle, which is that let's make sure that Islam remains in the United States and the UK. And that's the danger that secularism poses. What I mean by that is that I think there were some statistics recently about Scotland, if I'm not mistaken, about the churches and the collapse of religion in Scotland, and the same in the United States. Christianity is absolutely collapsing, right? The churches are empty. They're selling them off. I know here they're becoming nightclubs and pubs and things like that. In America, they're similar.
And here, the Muslim schools.
and also Muslim schools or mosques and things of this nature, right? Okay, so from what came this collapse? Why did this collapse happen? All right, and as the Prophet ﷺ told us to not follow into the steps of the people of the book down to the lizard hole. That's not where we want to go. My argument is that they have allowed themselves to be secularized, and so they have nothing left. Is that this happens in stages where secularism forces a type of reformation, right? So as I said, it's a paring down. It's like you're pruning a tree. However, you know that if you prune a tree, you can prune it so far that you kill it, right? So secularism, maybe there's a sort of shelf life to this sort of, the secular Christianity that was divorced of some of its elements. Then they brought in, the musical instruments and the rock concerts for their services, and they went away from what was a larger tradition. And my perspective is that we have to be very, very careful to make sure that we don't engage in the same process or fall prey to the same thing. That if our primary orientation, I believe our primary orientation as Muslims, God-fearing Muslims in the West is da'wah. Right? Like it should be da'wah. Now, if we experience a collapse similar to what the Christians have experienced, then the question of system is irrelevant. The question of which system is going to replace which system or whatever, if we don't have any actual Islam left, then there's nothing to replace anything with. So I would just, because this is something like if you go back to the Rand report and these sorts of things, we know that it's very explicit. It's a very explicit project from governments, think tanks, other organizations to sort of prop up this good Muslim, this other Islam, this cuddly Islam, this Islam that fits into a certain box of acceptability and that leaves everything else behind. And if we allow that to happen to us, the next stage, maybe 20, 30, 40 years later, is the same collapse that happened to the Christians. Yeah,
if I may say, just to summarize this point, I think absolutely what you are talking about is absolutely true, and no one argues about it. But on the other hand, we need, when we want to present ourselves, we need to present ourselves in a realistic, practical way. So we say that, okay, for America or for Britain or most of the European countries, what is the best system for them, because they are not going to implement Islam now, okay? We need to say, yes, maybe secularism is the best way for you, but we need some modifications in order for this secularism, first of all, not to become extreme secularism, as it is the French version of secularism, extreme secularism. And there is a difference between neutral secularism and secularism that is anti certain ideologies or certain practices, or anti-Islam secularism that is...
Tom is being a bit polite, but I'll say on his part, on his behalf, there is no neutral secularism.
I mean, Sheikh is completely right that there are different varieties of secularism. Laïcité in France is very aggressive. It's very, it's got so much antagonism towards religion. I would say yes. I don't believe that there is a neutral version of secularism, in that, whatever variety you find, because the goods that secularism promises, right? This supposedly neutral space in which everybody can enter as equals and exchange and tolerate. We have to actually critically assess, did this happen, right? Is this something that happened, or is it something that failed? And I would say that if the entry cost, right? If the cost of entering that space and having some free dialogue is actually losing part of what made you special in the first place, then perhaps secularism promised something that it couldn't deliver upon.
I totally agree, Tom, about that. We are not arguing about that. But I'm talking about from a practical perspective now. Okay, now in America we have a secular system, quote unquote. In Britain, in most of European countries,
Britain is a Christian country.
No.
Established
No. This is Salman. You are an academic person. This is an oversimplistic way. Okay.
I'm trying to probe why is it that why we're using the word secular to describe different or secular.
But no. See, Britain. Okay, don't drag me, don't distract me. I'll answer this question later. Okay, but my point is now there are systems in America, in Europe, etc., and those systems are secular, quote unquote, with so many comments on that. As Muslims now, brothers, we need to deal with the current situation and provide practical alternatives. So instead of saying, well, secularism is not neutral, etc., they will ask us, okay, so what do you propose? We cannot say we are proposing Islam because they are not ready, and the infrastructure to implement Islam is not there, and they are not ready. So what do you propose? Then we need maybe to go a little bit a lower, degree, in order to provide some practical solutions in order to make this secularism as neutral or as just as it can be. Otherwise we will be out of touch. Otherwise we will just be talking theoretically and it won't be practical. So that's why I believe that let us move on from that discussion. Criticism against secularism versus Islam. Let us talk about secularism versus any other system other than Islam. And what can we do in order to make this secularism a better system, for us as Muslims, for everyone, not necessarily for everyone, until maybe, Allah knows when the world is ready to endorse Islam or to embrace Islam. We can evaluate the situation. Allah knows. 50 years later, 100 years later, Allah knows. Okay, but now it is our challenge as du'at, as intellectuals, as academic, to present solutions based on Islamic values, but in the second level degree, not to tell them replace secularism with Islam. It won't work. We need to say, for example, human rights. We need to make sure that this and that and this and that. Family values. We need to make sure this and that and this and that. Let us provide this level of solutions.
If I may, so it'll just take me. I think I have an answer to what you're asking, but it just will take me a little bit to get there. So there's 2 points, and one of them is that in the immediate, when we're doing dawah, there's sort of the civilizational alternative, right? That we need to present to people, which you're talking about. But there's also some people, to be frank, aren't concerned with the civilizational level thinking. Some people, they have pain points that are much more immediate and personal, right? And this is actually very fruitful for dawah, because in the wake of secularism, or this type of secularism that is dominant, people, what have we seen? They're out of touch with their spirituality, right? They're separated from their fitrah. Their relationships are falling apart. Their families are falling apart. Their jobs are unfulfilling. They're subject to addiction and substance abuse and all these sorts of pain points, right? I see them as in the wake of secularism. So there's actually much fertile ground from a dawah perspective to approach people through these pain points. And not all of those people really care about the civilizational alternative, though some do, and I know all of us do, right? So sometimes, as an entry point, those are also important alternatives. How does Islam contrast to whatever the system, whatever we want to call it, has left you with. Look at how I know in the US, I always give the example, your sister lives in New York and your brother lives in California and your parents are in Texas and you have no relation, you call each other once a month. What relationship is that? I don't know if it's similar in the UK, but this is something that generationally is getting worse and worse and worse and worse, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is that I think it's really important not to necessarily present, yes, secularism versus Islam or things like that. But the trouble is that secularism operates in the background in such a way that it's almost something that you can't see for most people. And so in criticizing it, I think the goal is to shine a light on it and to show exactly what you're talking about, which is another way. I'll give you an example. In the way that people in the United States related to religion and understood religion and its role in society had a dramatic shift after the 1940s. If you go to the Supreme Court and read their court cases before, by the way, this is all in The Myth of Secular Violence by William T. Kavanaugh. It's a great book. That he says, before the 1940s, people thought of religion in the United States as a force that brought people together and a force that actually was a moral voice that kept the values of the nation intact. After the 1940s, there was a dramatic shift, and people started from the bottom up to the Supreme Court, started talking about religion as a divisive force, as something that inspired violence and division, and we can't talk about religion and politics. So it's not necessarily a self-evident thing. Now, in society, people take it as self-evident. They say, oh, religion is so divisive. This is actually a very, very recent way of looking at things. So I agree in the sense that within the system that exists now, right, there's room to maneuver. You can point to the 1930s and 1920s in America and say, hey, look, there was a time in this country where we understood that religion was a very important sort of mortar that held the bricks of society together, that we don't have to be afraid of whether it's Christianity or Islam or things like that, right? We can relate to it in a different way. I agree with that. I think that there's things that people need to understand, but I don't see how, well, I'll put it this way, that pointing out these sort of assumptions that operate in the background, I think is a very important part of that process, because things, especially as media continues and people's understanding of the world becomes more and more mediated through associations and memes, and it's very emotional. Like people, again, the Palestinian child with a rock who says Allahu Akbar touches on a whole constellation of associations that have been programmed into people, right? So you need to have some sort of way to critique, just to shine the light and say, hey, look, why do you think that this is that way? Why do you assume that this is worse than this, or whatever, right? Yeah, I don't know, this is a very American thing. Once I was at a grocery store, and there was a bunch, it's the most American thing I've ever seen, a bunch of beer cans arranged in the shape of a tank with an American flag on top. People walk by it every day and they say, well, normal, right? But this is very violent, right? So people have these assumptions and they need to be challenged, they need to be shown. Now, yes, I agree. There's a personal dimension where people need to be shown Islam can solve your issues. You have an addiction issue, Islam can solve it. You have a family issue, Islam shows a different way for your relationships, for your relationship with your soul. There's this whole thing of the fitrah that you've completely ignored. You've got all these pain points and Islam can solve it. And also to present something civilizationally different. I don't see us disagreeing like very, very much, but I do think that the critique of secularism is important, not to keep it too theoretical, but just to show people that, listen, there's thoughts that aren't your own that you think, and there's feelings that you think that were the process of a type of education, and it's not necessarily true.
I think the problem is that we just jumped into using the word secularism. We could have used modernity, we could use liberalism, capital L. What we're talking about is very similar, overlapping things. Take, for example, breakdown of the family. The fracturing nature of secularism or liberalism or modernity, right? And that moves into what you're saying about family values. But if we recognize that the reason why families are breaking up, siblings are talking to each other less and less, isn't just because of like a coincidence. No, it's because of the rise of certain ideas, values, in films, in literature, in music.
Yeah, definitely. There is an overlap between all of these.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it would be useful to look at some of the things, just so, especially imams, du'at, mashayikh are are in tune with recognizing some of the breadcrumbs left by secularism or liberalism, because it's operating in the dark. It's behind the scenes. It's silent. It's invisible. What are some of the breadcrumbs, right? So you see, for example, lots of maybe marriage breakdowns. You were nodding when he was talking about, sisters. Sometimes sisters are given projected a particular image. We've got a campaign that's underway, being developed in the background, a soundtrack called Powerful Muslim Woman. And one of the things that they're working on are things that they're calling kind of lies that we've been sold. That sisters have been sold, women have been sold certain promises by the invisible hand of the visible forces of secularism or liberalism or modernity. What are other things like that imams, dua, who are dealing with people on a day-to-day basis can say, you know what, this is a result of some of those hidden breadcrumbs that secularism or
just if I may jump just to conclude this point and maybe to move to other points, okay, in order to make this discussion fruitful. So maybe we can conclude that we need different approaches, okay? An approach just to maybe criticize secularism as a theory, but along that we need also du'at, activists, intellectuals, academics, also to provide the masses with practical solutions for microsystems, whether in finance, in politics, in social values, okay? Practical, not very detailed micro solutions, but maybe middle solutions, between micro and macro solutions. So people see that Islam is a practical way of life, is not just theoretical. Because, one of the biggest problems, I don't want to go into the impossible state, Wa'il Halaq theory. Now, this theory, it has been there from before Wa'il Halaq. Mustafa Abdul Razik, I'm sure you know Mustafa Abdul Razik as a political scientist. Well, he said in Islam there is no such political system, and there is no such khilafah system. And then, that he said this in the early 90s, or the first half of the 20th century. However, those ideas developed after that. And in the Arab world in particular, and that's why maybe Wa'il Halaq, when he wrote his book in English, that was a breakthrough. But in Arabic, we know this, that there were many quote-unquote secular academic Muslims who were promoting this idea that it is impossible to implement Islam in the 20th century. It is impossible. And Islam should be confined to the personal practices of individuals. And they were very aggressive in promoting this. And even, quote-unquote, some Islamists, in the early 80s, in particular, without mentioning certain names, they were very, they used to believe in this, and they used to advocate this, that it is impossible to have an Islamic state. All what we have, or all the maximum we can have at this moment is secular neutral state. And we all know, Erdogan's idea. Even when Erdogan visited Morsi, may Allah Jalla wa Ala have rahmah on him, he said to him, why are you so scared of secularism? Secularism can be implemented, and it can have different forms of secularism. So anyway, the motive behind all of these ideas is that we as so-called Muslim scholars, imams and intellectuals, Islamists, could not provide Islam as a solution for practical problems not just for spiritual problems or social problems, marriage, divorce, etc., on a personal level. No. Either we speak about Islam as a conceptual, high-level system, or what? A very micro detail, how you go to the toilet. Of course, we are not belittling this, yeah? And how you pray, how you fast, maybe divorce, marriage issues. But in the middle, to provide Islam as a solution for these systems, I think this is a major area we really need to jump in now to prove that Islam, despite the global system now, there is no khilafah, and Allahu Alam when khilafah will come back, and now there is a reality of United Nations, there are treaties, there is, even with all the criticism that is posed against the international law, but there are different systems and there are different realities, yeah, different contexts. How can we present Islam as a practical solution for such problems?
I do agree that we need to put a lot of work and thought into that middle level. We should clarify that halak is not saying, that Islamic governance is not possible, right? He is answering the Islamists and saying, is it possible to convert a nation state into an Islamic entity? Yeah. And he says, no, we tried it doesn't work. We need something else. Yeah. Right? So he's not a secularist. In fact, he's very against that. Yeah, but
I'm not saying this.
I just want everybody to make sure they didn't misunderstand what you said.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. One point that just to pick up and to, again, we're tying the bow on when we talk about presenting human rights, because sometimes you were talking about the need to present things in different registers, right? So if we're arguing Islam, we might find ourselves in a situation where we have to present something in the language of human rights or something like this. And that is true, that happens. But I would say that the scholars and da'is also have to keep in mind that we can use it as a tool, but we have to be very aware of the baggage that comes with that tool. Because the definition of what a human being is within what most people recognize as human rights is not the human being that you and I believe in. Yeah. It's not the human being that has a ruh, that has the barzakh, and there's ghaib, and there's all these different things. And that actually determines, your definition of a human being determines what rights you think you're entitled to. People, you say, hey, I have the right to, my unborn child has a right upon me. Right? They say, what are you talking about? You're crazy. No, this is not, we're talking materialism here.
Other than unborn child, are there any other differences?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, listen, there's a fundamental difference between a person who believes in a soul and doesn't believe in a soul. Okay? The entire calculus of maslahah changes. Because if you're believing that your life ends with your grave, then everything gets loaded into hayat ad-dunya. Yeah. Everything has to happen here. And so what's the worst possible thing that could happen to you is you lose your life, right? Even that, that's not the worst possible thing to us. The worst possible thing to us is shirk, right? And then there's all these different sorts of transgressions and violations that are different. We're more patient and willing to take.
No, the key thing actually, when you are talking about this, sorry to just to make the discussion, is that Allah's rights.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I spoke about this a lot, that yes, we are talking about the human rights. First of all, that needs to be fixed, okay? Human rights, the way it is presented now and the way it is practiced, etc. But most importantly, yeah, Allah's rights. So in a non-Islamic environment, etc., we have to first of all highlight that people are misusing so-called human rights, or it is sometimes unimplementable, unpractical, because to start with, they forgot about the Creator's rights. Yeah. So in order to fix human rights, yeah, and the implementation of it, etc., we need to recognize the Creator rights first of all. وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء. Yeah. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ. This is the mission of the prophets. So this is one thing, okay? Plus, even the way you look at human rights is not a balanced way, because you are giving more rights to individuals over the the Jama'ah. Yeah, even you are conflating between pleasure and rights, and you are thinking that pleasure is right. Yeah, but pleasure is pleasure. In fact, you are conflating between pleasure and real happiness. They think that, okay, yeah, when the person, for example, watch some movie, etc., and then he is happy, this is pleasure. Yeah, and this is what human beings want. No, what human beings want, real happiness. They are conflating between those. So, and they are also unable to balance between rights and duties and responsibilities. Rights in different contexts. The rights of parents over the children, the rights of children over parents, etc., etc. So, beside the rights of the Creator, there is like a bunch of huge problems within human rights, and that gives us a huge space for us as Muslims to write about them in order to present Islam, as I said, at the end as a civilizational replacement. Yeah,
100%. That's beautifully said. And so that brings us back to like that middle degree or that middle layer that we're talking about, and that's really, really important that we have to articulate. And actually, there's a really timely opportunity to do it, because when it comes to even just the political scene in the UK and the US, there's a lot of soul searching going on, a lot of introspection. How is it we're so weak and powerless? How couldn't we stop? And I think it's fair to say, especially for the US, and I'm guessing the UK too, that the government really doesn't function to serve the people, that the government is very disconnected from, so perhaps this is even something that Muslims and Islam can fix, right? Like in the United States, any Zionist entity can buy a politician. Everybody disagrees with it. Nobody likes that in the United States, whether you're a Muslim or non-Muslim. Maybe this is something that the Muslims can fix, campaign finance. I've talked to university students, and I've talked about, one of the things is, like you were saying, the difference between individual thinking versus collective thinking, and how the current society pushes us to think in individualistic terms. My major, then my career, then I'm going to move to wherever the job is best, even if it's far away from family. Where there's other ways of doing it that I think are more Islamically aligned. That where are you in your family? What if you make these decisions as a family, or even as a local community, right? There's a big difference between, well, I think that I want to be a doctor because I can get paid a lot of money, and my parents think it's the best job there is, versus I look around my neighborhood and we have Muslims doing this, we have Muslims doing that, we don't have any Muslims doing this. That's collective thinking, and I think these sorts of things are on the middle level. So one of the things that I've thought about talking about the mid-level, right? How to develop an imagination in people for what Islam could guide to. I think about family structure, right? I see, as we mentioned, people moving further and further away from family members, making decisions very individualistically rather than collectively, right? And this is known. There are books and studies about this. They used to call it the family corporation. Anybody who's immigrated from another place, right? Like my family came to the US from Italy, and there were 13 brothers and sisters, and one's doing this job and one's doing the other job, and they live together, work together, eat together, right? But then the next generation, now everybody starts to fray, everybody separates, goes their own way. So, these are decisions that people make, right? And if they're unaware, they might be pushed in one direction, but there's nothing stopping anybody from saying, actually, I'm going to commute to university as opposed to going to another city, right? Or we're going to make these decisions as a family. I'm going to stay with in an extended family situation. So, I mean, family dynamics and career choice and neighborhoods, where do you live, right? I was telling, I forget where we were, in Cambridge. Yeah, I was telling some of the parents asked me about advice for kids. I said, it doesn't matter what you tell them if your life decisions demonstrate that you haven't prioritized Islam. What neighborhood do you live in? did you choose the neighborhood based off of the best school system available and the tax bracket, or did you choose the neighborhood based off of how many masajid and Islamic schools and things like that? You can talk till you're blue in the face. Your decisions really show your priorities. So just, those decisions that people are making anyway, trying to get them to be intentional, collective, Islamic, But the one interesting, and I'd like your guidance on this, Sheikh, that in the last 6 months, people have been very, very focused on politics, with good reason. Right. And this, I think, is another area of the mid-level where people are talking about now how to build power as a community. Do we have Muslim sort of, in America, we call them political action committees, super PACs. Here it's different. I forget the terminology, but donating, running candidates, right, for electoral. Then there's other things like health services. There's other things such as charity work. There's a lot of mid-level stuff. So I don't know, I'm interested in your thoughts, especially with the political realm. Like, how does, what is a power building sort of Islamic alternative look like? Yeah. And we're not talking about, like you said, changing the whole system. We're just talking about what we have to work with right now in front of us, the options, like what do we have to do?
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. See, just to make it short, because I'm actually preparing to publish something about this, which is the road to reform. You remember we spoke about it, and I delivered a number of courses about it, the road to reform. In brief, we as Muslims, we need 4 steps. Okay, this roadmap has 4 steps. First of all, increasing the religiosity of people, the iman of people. Second thing, unity, the unity of the Muslim ummah, and maybe some unity, a level of unity with non-Muslims who share the political sentiment, with Muslims. So this is unity. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. I'm not mentioning the adillah because it is clear. The third one is knowledge, whether Islamic knowledge or general knowledge, because knowledge is light. Now the fourth thing is to be influentials, and mainly to be influentials in 7 areas, to be effective and influentials. The first one is political level. The second one is judiciary and law. The third one is media. The fourth one is economy and finance. The fifth one is social life.
What does that mean, Sheikh?
So to be effective in anything related to the social life, influential in, for example, laws related to children, laws related to family life.
So laws, wouldn't that be the same as?
There, of course. Between all of these areas, there is an overlap. But we need to be influential in those, and it is good.
And
society in general.
Okay, different levels of society.
Exactly, and even with مثلا laws related to how to run the day-to-day life. Okay.
Is that number 5?
So this is number. So we said politics, law, media, finance, social life, then education, which is, as you can see, a big one. And the 7th one is da'wah. So if we are influentials in those areas, especially trying to get into key positions where you are influencing the decisions, decision making. If we are, whatever we do in terms of da'wah, and we are not influentials, we cannot influence the how politics is running. We are not influence the decision-making processes. We will be ineffective. And you know, as we're talking about it, it is very sad that Muslims have, especially the du'at now, they don't have that positive attitude towards key areas such as politics, law, judiciary. Yeah, they want to keep away from them. They don't want to get into them. For example, politics. In general, Muslims have a very negative attitude towards politics. And whenever they talk about politics, they talk about it in a very negative way. Look, even from a macro perspective, sometime we gave this example. In India, 1 point something billion people, they, overnumbered China recently, you know.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Overnumbered China.
China's suffering because of its one-child policy now.
No, they made it 2, and in some areas, someone told me 3. Yeah. In India, the Muslim population, they say, is 200 plus millions, around maybe 20% of the population. Okay, some people say more. Many Muslims say no, the number is far bigger than this. Now, the Congress, the Indian Congress, I know the number, 543 people. How many Muslims, are there? 40 something, which means less than 50, which means less than 10%. And those are not the Muslims we want. Okay, another example, in Tanzania, the Muslim population is 60+%. Some people say it's more, 60+. How many, what is their representation in the parliament? 30%, which is almost half. Now, alhamdulillah, they have the prime minister, this sister, hijabi sister, and inshallah things will improve. But generally speaking, we are not interested in. And see, we have to differentiate between two things. For example, law. When I say law, Muslims have a very negative attitude when it comes to law. And now my fear is because of what is happening in Gaza, and the international law could not stop this. Whenever you mention the international law, no, stop. Look what they are doing in Gaza. This is the international law that you are talking about. Yeah, this is something, and the reality is something else. You live by international law. I live by international law. I have a passport. I cannot travel from this country to that country, except Israel, so-called Israel, violated the international law because it is backed by the US. Okay? But whenever any Muslim country violates the international law, you will see the whole world is standing against it. They use the international law. And I'm not saying there is a difference between believing in it and using it. We are not believing in it, okay? But this is a reality that we are living by. And I remember maybe in 2014, we had a big gathering for scholars in Turkey. And there was one professor of international law. I remember he was Kuwaiti. And he was talking about some aspects of the international law, even the language. He said, we have to be careful when we talk about Zionism and not to conflict between Zionism and Yahud, because in Arabic there can be an overlap and we have to be careful. And then he said even our actions according to should be in line with the international law. And there was 2014 there was an attack against Gaza just before that, and miskeen wallahi, he had storms of anger by who? By the scholars. And those scholars, many of them are academics. What are you talking? Which international law, etc.? And well, I felt sorry for him. He's a professor from Kuwait. And then after that, I spoke to him and I said, I totally agree with you. But so anyway, see, as a proof for that, South Africa, how did they shake the world?
Yeah, by bringing the case to the International Court of Justice.
Exactly, using the international law. Yeah, and then Namibia against Germany. You know, now they have a case, and Germany started to, you know, be shaken a little bit. Okay, what is Namibia? Namibia, you know, Namibia is this poor African country.
Okay, but they took Germany to the court. Yeah, so even
the Gambia took Myanmar.
Yes, Gambia as well. Yeah, so Gambia.
It's just the way
how it works.
Yeah,
how it works.
But Sheikh, what would you say to someone, just to push back a bit? Someone might say, okay, you're calling for basically representation, more Muslims in parliament, senates, Congress, whatever. But in order to go into those spaces, you have to take off your Islamic...
Okay, see. We can address this, but let me say something.
I don't believe in it. I'm just saying it and using it as
I know. All people say this. Yeah. Whenever I mention this, everywhere they talk about this. I say, brothers, in management and leadership, don't think about obstacles before success. Because if you think like this, you will never achieve anything. You will never do something. I want to go there. Oh yeah, but there are what this and that and this.
Yeah, reasons why it rains. Yeah, it's like reasons why it can't work. It's
exactly.
Like you're not just sitting around finding reasons why it can't work.
Yes.
Yeah. Solution-oriented thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. Solution-oriented and goal-oriented. And this is how we achieve. If there is a will, there is a way. Yeah, but to say, oh no, we can't do this, we can't do that. Yeah, so this is key. And that's why even in the West, I say to brothers, for example, many of them, we have councils here in the UK. Maybe in America you have what do you call it? The local authorities.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, there's of Muslims or non-Muslims?
No. Like for example, what do you
local government?
Local government. Yeah. Like city council usually.
Yeah, city council, and within the city council, boroughs. Okay.
Oh, yeah, bureaus of this or committees sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. For example, here our area is Tower Hamlet. So there are local authorities.
Islamic Republic of Tower Hamlets.
Yeah. No, not that. So Tower. So I say to the brothers, when you work for the council, try to get into key influential positions where the decision making is happening.
Yes.
Yeah. If we just work hard without getting into those areas, okay, we won't be that effective. We want to be, and we will leave it to other people who will not work they will work for their own interests, not even for the interests of the entire society. And we are not saying this because we are looking for our interests against the interests of others. Yeah.
No, that's a great example. I mean, in addition to not necessarily believing in things, or making the differentiation between, well, we believe in this versus we're going to use it.
Yes.
That's very important. And also, I think a lot of times we want to skip to the last step as opposed to the first step. So when people pay attention to politics in the US, they always pay attention to the federal level first.
Yeah.
When there's school boards, city councils, things that actually affect your day-to-day life that are very, very honestly easy to participate in. I remember when I was still living in New York, every city, that city, Utica, was divided into wards, and the ward that the masjid was in was the 5th ward. And I looked at the previous election for how many votes would it take to get 200 votes. It's nothing.
Exactly.
Absolutely
this
nothing.
is exactly the situation here. Yeah.
And so it'd be very, very easy just to do the math and say, okay, well, here's what, now we crawl and then we walk and then we run. And what happens when we don't do that, when we try to fling someone up into outer space and say we're going to find our savior and put them at the federal level, PM or something like that, they have no support. There's no grassroots power underneath of them. So they have to compromise. So they have to listen to what the party says. They have to do whatever, you know, so it's like a pyramid. Like you build a pyramid by building a wide base, and then the next step is a little less wide, and the next step is a little less wide.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of opportunities that we're just not taking advantage
this
of.
kind of answers a question I had anyway before about access versus influence versus building real power. Right? There's lots of things, and maybe we need some advice from you, Sheikh, about how to deal with maybe Muslims we disagree with their political strategy. You know, there's this thing of kind of going to 10 Downing Street iftars or White House iftars, and people kind of criticize those who think they're doing, you know, they might be they're intending to do good, but they may be doing harm, but maybe like flinging someone up to that level. Whereas you know, what you said about building actual power and influence, it's a slow process, gradual process. And but there's still going to be some people we disagree with their strategy. How do we...
See, first of all, you know, with this, that's why I mentioned the 4 steps, and the first one is religiosity. One big mistake of the reform movements that were proposed mainly by Muslims in the Islamic world, I haven't seen a proposal for reform within the Western world.
What do you mean by reform, Sheikh?
And reforming Islam, building Islam.
You mean tajdeed or reviving?
No,
because reforming Islam has many different
I know it
connotations.
has different connotation. I know what I mean is building the Muslim Ummah to become one of the one of the leading nations. Okay, I have to be politically careful. One of the leading nations. Okay, let me be open. One of our biggest problems as globally as Muslims is we don't have a strong Muslim state that will defend Islam globally in all fronts. We don't have a strong Muslim state that will have an Islamic agenda and it will defend Islam, and Muslims globally in all fronts.
Hence, we have to rely on South Africa and
exactly. And you know, the world. Erdogan mentioned this. Okay, now I know some many people they started to have Erdogan phobia. Okay. Because of what is happening recently. I'm not talking about that.
Some people have Erdogan philia.
I was about to say the same exact thing.
Okay. I'll leave this and that. He said the world is bigger than 5. And this is a true statement. Unfortunately, it did not have that much, support from Muslim countries. The statement, and he did not have that. Yes. Why the world is just confined to those 5 veto power countries? And none of them is a Muslim country. So our aim as Muslims is to have a strong representation globally. And if we have that strong representation, the so-called Israel or this occupation can't do 1/10 of what they have done to Gaza, and just the Muslim world is just watching. Okay, so this is what we want. Now, it takes time to build this, but it is a process. It will, inshallah, if we are mature enough, we will get into that stage. Now, while we are going to that stage, we should present it to the Muslim Ummah that we are successful. This is a big mistake many, Muslims, thinkers and leaders fall into, which is they present that victory of the Muslim Ummah means that we have re-established the Khilafah and the world now is becoming Islamic, or we have the Khilafah like the Ottoman Empire and etc. And anything below that is a defeat, or it doesn't mean that we are successful. Yeah, this is a big mistake, and this is a demotivating discourse. Yeah, in fact, it is counterproductive. It will paralyze us from, progressing. No, as far as you are climbing the mountain towards the peak, you are successful. Yeah, one time you will get into the peak, alhamdulillah, but don't call yourself as far as you are not. Oh, it is still there. Ya Allah, when am I going to get there? Victory is not happening, etc., etc. This is wrong. First of all, demotivating, as we said, but logically it is wrong. Shar'i wise, it is wrong, etc. That's why Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ إِن يَمْسَسْكُمْ قَرْحٌ فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ قَرْحٌ مِثْلُهُ. You will go through many challenges, and as far as you are progressing and believers, you are superiors. So I was saying that we need to keep building ourselves. Now, towards that process, I said religiosity and unity. Now, there will be some Muslims who might disagree with this, and they might think that, well, it's better to align yourself with the superpowers, etc., etc. We should be clever enough not to be divided. Yeah, and avoid talking about dividing ideas. Divisive ideas with those whom we know that they have problems with that. So we don't need to do that, okay? Because it will divide us. Even if you see that others are working against you, be careful, but don't be distracted by their enmity. Otherwise, you will find side battles and you will not be focused.
It's almost like just outmaneuver them.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than let them draw your attention, and then you're spending trying to get distracted.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of military metaphors.
Yeah.
Strategies of mashallah, tabarakallah.
Yeah.
So
and طبعا, see, when we talk about unity, now many people, alhamdulillah, they talk about unity, but the tools for unity,
it's still lip service.
Yes.
It's still talk.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So at least, I always like to look at the positive side.
Yes, mashallah.
Before we were not talking about it. Now at least we are talking about it, which is something positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least we want it. Okay. And now slowly more people want to be united. The tools. This is a challenge. And I say that the true leaders now, the true Muslim leaders who invent or produce practical tools, and they act upon them to showcase for the Muslim Ummah that, listen, it can work, and this is a model, and we have tried it, and it is, it is working. So this is the true leadership now for the Muslim Ummah. Yeah.
It's really interesting. We were talking, it's true that a lot of the leaders, they have more collaboration or relationships behind closed doors than the followers.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because the leadership sometimes is afraid
of their followers. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like who's leading who.
Yes.
So it's really important that the leaders actually educate their followers.
Absolutely.
By demonstrating that, I was talking with one of the brothers here yesterday, just even if you go, I was joking, but half joking, get together and go pick flowers together or something, anything. It doesn't have to be.
No. I actually, this This is a very effective tool.
Yeah.
No, don't mention it that it is a joke. No, this is actually, if you were to ask me, but because this discussion is not about the tools, but actually, this is one of the very effective tools, and it can be manifested in different ways. We tried it, yeah, and it is, subhanallah. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, see, Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. What will happen? فإذا الذي بينك وبينه
يا سلام.
what? عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. And then Allah Jalla wa Ala says what? وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا. صبروا here means what? By the way, we normally present صبر in a negative way. صبر يعني okay, as هذا نور الدين Yildiz, yeah, the Turkish, mashallah, Shaykh. Yeah, when I mentioned this, he said this is, we call it in Turkey the sabr of donkeys. Okay, what you are describing. I said, yeah, so we don't have the sabr of donkeys, where someone is beating you up and you are just like a donkey. Okay, no. Sabr, the best translation I found it is self-control. Yeah, so وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ, those who have self-control, they can control their emotions and they are goals driven. Yeah, so they can do this, which is what Allah Jalla wa Ala says. If there is an enmity, yeah, idfa billati hiya ahsan.
Yeah,
respond to any negative thing by positive thing, which includes go and visit him. And this is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Jalla wa Ala said, وجبت محبتي لي المتحابين فيها والمتزاورين فيها والمتبادلين فيها. My mahabba is what? Is incumbent upon what? Those who visit each other for my sake. Those who spend on each other for my sake. Those who love each other for my sake. So if you go to any one of those who are like opponents and you just visit them, take a gift for them, etc., have projects together. Yeah, this is a very effective tool, I'm telling you, and I tried it with all groups. Yeah, with all groups, it works perfectly. So let us not belittle that. And I don't want the brothers, the audience to say, oh yeah, no. It is actually, see, the basis for, I have a theory, is not only Plato and, those who have theories. Okay, we have also theories as Muslims.
But you should be practical, Shaykh.
Yeah, practical. Yeah, practical.
Practical theories.
Their theories are philosophers. Yeah. Unity, the basis for unity is akhlaq, not ideology. Yeah, the basis for unity is akhlaq. Yeah, not ideology. Because and akhlaq is a comprehensive,
right, yeah, in the wider sense of what it means.
The wide. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ was focusing on akhlaq. And Allah Jalla wa Ala, in the very first verses of the Quran, Noon, wal qalami wa ma yasturun, either it is the second or the third chapter to be revealed, wa innaka la'ala khuluqin azim. Yeah? Because this is what Allah Jalla wa Ala says. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي, you have enmity, not he is a Muslim, you have enmity, you both of you have enmity. What resolves this enmity? ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Yeah, ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Deter that what is bad with that what is good. A gift, yeah, can solve the problem. A smile can solve the problem. Yeah. And sometimes we think of, huge things to resolve the intra-differences between the Muslim Ummah, while actually initiative, like what you mentioned, okay, from some key du'at here and there, to be together, to visit each other, I don't want to mention many examples. May Allah Jalla wa Ala forgive us for our shortcomings. Some people who have like clear differences, wallahi, one telephone call when they had some challenges, when they were attacked by media. Assalamu alaikum, assalam. Sheikh, how are you? How is everything? Are you okay? Listen, I am. If you want anything, yeah, we'll support you. The whole organization will support you. Let us, and just be confident. This is part of the test we go. Something like this.
Yeah.
Khalas.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
They remember that afterwards.
Yeah, of
And
course.
they remember this, for the rest of their life.
Yep. Yeah, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
Mashallah, Tom's been
Patient.
doing that. He's been doing that kind of stuff, mashallah.
Yeah, may Allah reward him.
Maybe in a different country, but he's got the same manhaj, mashallah.
Yeah, that's why he is extending his hand to me, so to remove any enmity. We don't have enmity.
Renewing his bay'ah. Yeah. Mashallah. And I would love to carry on, but we're taking a lot of your time, Shaykh. So Jazakallah khair, Shaykh.
Jazakallah.
And Imam Tom for coming. And Jazakallah khairan to you for watching. If you like this podcast, give it a like and a share. And press subscribe, hit the bell notification, and follow Sound Frequency wherever you're getting these podcasts. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.